Our main actor, our elder actor, is a Japanese American, and he's a really intelligent and thoughtful man who has been making work about the Japanese American experience, and especially the history around Japanese internment for the last 2 decades of his life. And then, of course, our playwright has, both he and our playwright have family members who were incarcerated. And so the issue is very personal to them. I'm personally not Japanese American, as I mentioned. I am Filipino American, though, and my mother is an immigrant. She came from the Philippines, a little province called Pangasinan. And I grew up in an intergenerational home. I was raised very frequently by my mother's mother, my inang, and my auntie Ampi. And so I'm very familiar with, that intergenerational experience that we see in the play. This incredible love between people of such different ages, and also at the same time this incredible cultural barrier between them. That is one of language, one of understanding how to be with other people, one of social etiquette, of individualism versus collectivism, and also the difference in understanding how to self-sacrifice. I think that is one of the primary themes that's so powerful and beautiful in the play is, this older person, Fuzzy, who has really been a loner for most of his life, comes to love this orphan kid and is making choices for her that are good for her. They are. But she's young and she doesn't understand. And even though he makes these difficult choices that are, for her best life, she tells him she hates him for it. It's really hard. And so I think, that's something I personally really connect to, this budding of wants between this older generation who has sacrificed so much and who loves, their children so much as to cross entire oceans, to move mountains for them, and a younger generation who maybe sometimes struggles to understand that until they get a little bit older. So this play has had me really thinking about my relationship with my mother and also my relationship with my father. That father-child dynamic is so strong in this play. I think anyone who is, a family that they love will really resonate and be moved by some of those themes. I think creativity is one of the, most essential parts of humanity. People make things. We sing, we laugh, we tell jokes, we tell stories. That's how we make meaning of our world. And during moments that are incredibly horrific and difficult to process and painful and traumatic, often the best way, and sometimes the only way, to process that pain is through creative expression. And that's really what we see Fuzzy doing in this play. They're trapped in this place. They have little to no resources, and they can't leave. Their basic, constitutional rights have been taken away from them. In some ways, their right to dignity has been taken away from them. But what Fuzzy still has is his agency and his creativity. And he chooses to make a rock garden. And he uses his agency and his creativity in order to make the environment that they're trapped inside of one that is more peaceful, that is inviting, and that is safe. And so really, it's such an act of generosity. I mean, he himself is changed through the act of making the garden, but it really is an act in service of the community, that it is this place where people can come and feel relieved of the stress and trauma of their circumstances around them. That here is this little oasis in which we can meditate and feel safe and feel peaceful and recognize the beauty in nature and just the fact of living. I think those are all really essential things when you're living through something so difficult and traumatic and scary. One of the really interesting dynamics that we see in this play is the way Fuzzy and Penny respond to incarceration and what they believe that they are owed, the way that they feel they can respond to the armed guards, for example. And you have this line in the play where Penny says, "No, it's our right to free speech. We have the right to free speech. We can say what we want. That is a constitutional right. That's our right." And remember, she's a naturalized American citizen, and Fuzzy is not. And his perspective very often is like, "Shikataganai, what can you do? There's nothing that can be done. We have to move forward." And we have to survive, and that means sometimes making certain kinds of sacrifices. What can be done? And and her response is something much more American, which is militant. And I think that's also a reflection of a difference between intergenerations, right? The younger generation is always the one to take up the sword, to take up the torch of like revolution, and that's really where Penny's spirit sits. She's such a fierce character. And Fuzzy is like this very grounding father character. He wants her to be safe. So I think, that is a major way that this intergenerational difference is seen in the play. We'll see if my mother watches this. I think, one of the things that, is true to my narrative, at least, is, I think when like an immigrant like parent or grandparent like comes to a new country, often they're looking to create more opportunities for their children in whatever form that might be for them personally. And so, my mother grew up in poverty. She grew up really poor. And so it was really important to her that her children would become professionals and be able to support themselves, and not just support themselves, but really flourish in a financial way. And here I am, a whole artist. Which I'm so glad that I am an artist and I get to do work like this, but that is certainly, a point of conflict. It's hard for an older immigrant parent, perhaps, to see their child who they want to live in security choose a path that is often defined by insecurity and what ifs and who knows what comes next. And so that butting of heads is true for my own story. And truly, it's not the artistry that my mother, was against. It's just the possibility that I might not be taken care of. And I think, that again speaks to this difference of mentality between an older generation and a younger generation. Especially, a younger American generation. We love to do what we want, and we love to do what our parents don't want us to do. I think now that I've, become a professional in my field, that my mother has kind of had a change of heart, like, oh, wait, this can be great, and I see you doing wonderful things. Mother, if you're watching this, know that I love you, and I say all of these things with love. But I think, sometimes it takes an older generation a little bit longer to see that this kind of life with, more creative and expansive possibilities is one that is possible. That can be hard when they're looking, for security. That's why they come to a place. I think, in this present day and age, I think all of us are a little more familiar with the function of trauma, where it shows up. I think all of us have been a little bit more anxious, a little bit more depressed, a little bit more lonely. And in my personal experience of anxiety and fear and depression, I found that creative expression is so important in releasing painful and often stuck feelings and memories. Because the way that our minds process trauma is not one of logic. It's an animal response. And often, not always, but often, the best way to soothe and to release trapped emotions that aren't logical is to approach them in ways that are emotional and not logical, right? Through art making, through music, through poetry, through moving your body in ways that are pleasurable, through making a rock garden. Roy Sekigahama, the playwright, has given us this wonderful opportunity to literally build something beautiful on stage. The audience gets to watch the stage go from sand and kind of nothing to this like lovely, beautiful, aesthetic garden. And as that garden grows, it also reflects the way that the relationship between the characters grows as well. So I think, that's one of the things that I was really excited about when I read the play, and what I was really excited to talk to Christiane about, when she invited me to join the project. And yeah, I'm really excited that I get to be here and explore all those things. The little company that I ran, we told very different stories. We're focusing on the Filipinx experience. But I think it's significant because most of our histories, and especially our histories as they relate to the United States, go untold. We don't learn about Japanese internment in school. And if we do, it's typically like a sentence, a paragraph in a book. We learn a whole lot more about battles and dates and peace treaties and all of that stuff, but we learn a lot less about, the folks on the margins and how they're affected by these historical events and big decisions by people in power. Important to have a diversity of stories told by a diverse body of people, because that makes us, a more rich human experience, right? As artists and just people interacting with one another. But also, I think it's significant because we're also people going to learn about these histories. I'm not really sure. You kind of have to seek it out in order to learn these histories that are so deeply interwoven in the history of our country. And so with this play in particular, I think it's so important because, the narrative of Japanese incarceration is very much submerged. After the war and after the camps were closed, they were torn down and the rock gardens were filled in with dirt. They were made to entirely disappear, to be submerged in the memory of history. And only after, there are books on this, but only after archaeologists went back and dug up these rock gardens was some of this history remembered and recovered and publicized. And even then, it's not common knowledge. So I think the theater is, a really wonderful and vibrant and participatory place where we can learn about those histories and really connect with the hearts of the people who experienced them in a personal way, and then, become more informed people in the way that we connect with diverse people in our actual lives.